Hi, you're listening to Thoughtful Wellness Revolution, where we believe wellness isn't wellness if it's just for you. We're your hosts, Zahra and Hien. And before we get started, please make sure to give us a 5-star rating and review. Even though we're a podcast that believes in decolonizing, we're still bound to the algorithm. So every little bit that you can help us out, we really appreciate it, and we thank you for all the support. Let's get into it. Hello, friends, and welcome to a very special and a little sad episode of Thoughtful Wellness Revolution because, dun, 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 Hien and I are breaking up with the podcast. We want to make sure that you all know, first and foremost, Hien is very adamant about this. We personally are not breaking up. We still love each other. And we love so much of what we have done here on this podcast and all the people that we have had on. But the world is happening around us.
And the world's on fire.
Yeah, I was saying it nicely, but the world is literally on fire, quite literally. Don't go to fucking Hawaii. But yeah. So last week we had a conversation where Hien and I were checking in, and we kind of came to the realization that we got a lot going on in our lives. There is, as we have said before, a lot going on in the world. Literal fires. And it really has us thinking about the podcast and wellness and what is going on here. And one of the words I used about this was disheartening. I have like a disheartened feeling towards wellness, and I was just wondering, Hien, if you want to talk a little bit more about the conversation that brought us here, what's going on, or your feelings, because we just want to get into this, right?
Yes, we do want to get into this. So I think, first of all, we're both in 2023 at this point, and we started a podcast in late 2021. So it's actually been almost 2 years, which is like, it's almost kind of impressive to think that we lasted this long, actually. But yeah, life has been happening for both of us. And something that has been a thing for me is that I have been trying to live the quote normie life. So like working 40 hours a week and all that. Fun stuff, boring stuff, doing the hard things you got to do, the boring things that me as a Enneagram 4 has to learn how to do. And so I'm living my life just as like any other working class person under capitalism. And of course, I'm also realizing just how freaking hard it is to feel like you can have the energy and time for wellness in that. And so I look back in those days where when I was first like a new yoga teacher and I was really excited to like share about wellness and all that shit, of like how much bullshit I spread by just telling people like, oh, like you can just do, I don't know, just make time for it, right? Like if it's important, make time for yoga and meditation and wellness and all that bullshit. But now that I'm really in it, right? Like now that I'm really in it, I'm like, wow, that was a lot of bullshit. And there is still a lot of bullshit. And the wellness world, I feel lucky that I have even met Zahra and the people that we've had on the podcast who are trying to do things differently. Like that was the heart of this podcast, was like, can we showcase people are trying to do things differently? And so it's like, yes, we can. And it is a lot like a drop in the ocean, because the vast majority of what is out there that's considered wellness that is still like really accepted is bullshit. It's not inclusive. It's not accessible. And it is so incredibly, it's like jarring, like once you have been in spaces where it is something done differently, and then like now you see like how it is otherwise, it's kind of like, wow, that's really hard. It's really jarring. And there's a lot more to be said about that, but that's just kind of my like off the cuff on my mind. It's bullshit out there.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I agree with so much of what you said. And I got a little teary thinking about when I first started teaching yoga. Oh my God, I'm doing it right now. Hold on. But Yeah, because there is so much harm that I personally too was, spreading and unaware of. And I think that happens not just with yoga teachers, with so many people in wellness, because there is so much misinformation, disinformation, and conspiracy theories just all wrapped up into wellness. And I think as Hien's talking about, her normie job and normie life and how it is so hard, to make wellness fit in. I think a lot of times not from the people we're having on this podcast who are all lovely and we are so appreciative of them, but like so often what you're ending up with is like neoliberal bullshit. It's like, how do you optimize? It's not actual wellness of how do we as a society and a community be well. It is, how do I also, in addition to working 40 hours, also take care of my mental health and go for a run and prep my meals and, and also relax. And it's like, not like we're working towards building a society that is well. We're working towards some hyper individualized, unattainable version of what it means to be well in a society that is deeply unwell.
Oh my God, 100%, 100%. And I'm like, I was like nodding along and I just really feel it. And I just also think like, I don't know if you want to get into this yet, Zahra, but I even think like with some of the people who we have seen and been around who are doing things, not necessarily the people that we've invited on our podcast, but like there are people who are trying their best to like push a different kind of message, but because they're working within capitalism, it doesn't always land right, it doesn't always feel right, or there's always something that feels a little bit off, or sometimes even grifty of it. Like, do you want to get into that yet, Zahra? I know that you said you want to talk about this.
Yeah, because I have lots of feelings about it and thoughts, because it's like you see people who you respect, who are doing good work, who you think maybe in person, you think are good people. And it's not to say that they aren't, or that this is a saying of like, see, they're grifters and they're trying to trick you. But like, that's the thing about the way wellness culture is set up in a society, if I want to be real honest, that's so fucking driven by capitalism, like the goal is everyone's trying to survive. And it's like, yes, I see you're trying to survive and I appreciate that. And I think it's important. And I know that you're adding this work into the world in some way, but it starts to become like a wellness industrial complex, like an activist industrial complex. Like it's still the drive to consume, the drive to produce, the drive to get attention. It's like someone said we live in like an attention economy right now. And you know what I mean? It still feels like that. And it's like, it's chasing after a thing, it's chasing after an ideal, it's chasing after a product, the next training, the next thing. And I'm not, because I don't want to talk about a specific person, because it's not like I think this one person is doing a bad thing, because I love a lot of these people and I think they're doing great things. And I am disheartened by it because it feels like there is no escape in this route. And I think a lot of why so many people end up in wellness, and why I personally got into yoga and wellness and all this stuff, is that I wanted to help undo a system that I didn't think was working for people. And upon being in the system, it's not you change it from within the system, the whole thing needs to come down. And I see myself just so upset and wanting more community-based work that isn't centered around wellness. Sorry,
Yeah.
I rambled a little.
No, I mean, I started with a big ramble too. It's all good. But I kind of feel like a lot of people end up in wellness because we're trying to get away from like the corporate rat race world. But because we're still living within the very same systems, it becomes its own rat race in the wellness world, right? So it becomes like, okay, so you're no longer working a 9-to-5 job where you have to try to please your bosses or whatever, but now it is the attention economy. You have to try to please all your followers and get more followers, and then you have to try to sell them things, right? So whatever that consumption may be, whether it's books or trainings, or you're trying to get like a key speaker gig or whatever it might be, or maybe it's certain products, right? Like there is still this, like, it just feels very obvious that it is still capitalism. Even the people who I love deeply, whose books I do consume and whose trainings I'm like, oh yeah, I still hope to do this person's training one day or something like that. I still love them. And I'm just like, whoa, you're still in this like really deep. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, you're still in this really deep. And yeah, I think that's the part that is hard, because it's kind of like, okay, if some of these people with the best intentions, if they still can't fucking escape this, then like who can, right? Like it's a little bit like who can. And this is not to say that like I don't want to sound too doomer, especially as an Enneagram 4, but I just want to be real in that, like, this is what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, this is what Zahra is seeing and feeling, and like we don't think we are messed up for this. Like I actually feel like I wish more people would see this and realize this, because it's like, no matter what it is, at the end of the day, there is still this message of like, oh, you need to consume, or you need to put in a position where other people are consuming your stuff. And it gets to a point where I honestly kind of feel like, actually, you don't have to. Like, if it doesn't actually serve you to be consuming my content or my podcast, like, don't waste your time and money on that. Like, but that's like the opposite of what like a good capitalist would say, right? Or a good neoliberal girl boss would say.
I know, that just made me laugh so hard, because it's like, yeah, don't listen to my podcast. And it's like, yeah, no, I feel that way too. It's like, if it's not going to benefit you, fuck it. Why are you wasting your time? But exactly. And it feels so much like there is no way through, like, there's no way around it. It's like a lot of people go into entrepreneurship in the same regard as wellness, being like, it's my way out of capitalist nonsense, and it's not.
They become petite bourgeoisie or whatever, the word I can't say.
Yeah, petite bourgeoisie. Bourgeois. Oh my God, I'm normally good at saying it, but now I've heard you say it, I can't. Bourgeoisie. Yeah. But exactly, it's like you're just focused then on like, well, now it's just me fighting capitalism alone, and I gotta keep pushing, and like I don't want to keep pushing. The only thing I want to keep pushing is the limits of what we are willing to accept in society, because like we're watching people starve, we're watching people die, like I can't. And we're all just like, have you looked at my training? Here are 5 ways to find more peace in your day. And it's like, where the fuck is anyone's peace coming from? Did you not see the fires from Canada? The fires in Hawaii? What I'm sure will be the next set of fires in California, God forbid. I'm sorry, I don't mean to put that out in the universe. I like regret saying that, and I'm very sorry, California.
But hey, you didn't have to say that. We know that terrible shit is happening with fires like everywhere and climate disasters everywhere. So it's so like, yeah, I guess that's the thing, is like, it feels like so ridiculous that we are suffering under capitalism, and the only solutions that our leaders have for us, or anyone, and I don't mean leaders like, governments, but I mean leaders like even the leaders, like the entrepreneurs and content creators and creatives and artists around you. It's like a lot of them like, oh, the only solution is more capitalism, baby. Like the only solution is like, you go sign up for what I have to offer, or you buy and consume what I have to offer, and then somehow we're going to work towards, it's like, and then somehow things are going to get better. And I'm kind of like, I'm not the type of person who thinks that nothing will get better ever, but it's just like, these are not the steps to take, because a lot of what these people I see do, and also the things that I've done in the past, I look at, like, I have to ask myself, like, is this liberating? And if so, like, who is it liberating for? And who is it not liberating for? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so even if I did successful, even if I was successful and made a certain amount of money that made me feel good and safe and secured in what I did, and I had my little group of like-minded friends who were similar as me, is that liberating for all the people who I did not have to think about at all? Like the people who still like, it's not enough to just like pitch them your yoga class or training or tell them to buy your book. Like it's just not. And I'm not saying that like people in this world think that. Like I'm not saying like, oh, they really just believe that if they got enough people to sign up for their program, that the whole world would change for the better. I mean, of course, some of them might think like that, but I don't believe they necessarily think that. I think that they see themselves as like a particular role. But I guess I'm saying is I don't think that kind of role is really doing much at this point. I think we need way more. Not to say that it can't exist, but I'm just thinking like, oh, we need way more people who are going to be willing to say no to like the whole circus. Like, this is a circus. I don't want to get involved anymore. I'm going to do some other cool shit that is nothing about, that's not necessarily going to be profitable for me, but might be more liberating for all of us in the long term.
Yeah, and I think, thank you for saying that, because I think it's really interesting, because a lot of what I've noticed as well is the excuse. I don't even want to say excuse because it is a valid fucking reason. But the thing everyone says about it is like, oh, well, like they have to make their money too. They have to support themselves too. They have to survive too. And it's like, of course, like that's the whole thing, is we all want everyone to survive. And it's like when we're all so caught up on how am I going to keep my attention economy high, or like my, attention high, like people focus on me, people bringing things into me. Like you hear it in the words I'm saying, it's me, me, me. And I don't think any of these people are working intentionally or actively and consciously from the like, how does it benefit me lens? But the system stays the same, and the system requires you to be focused on me, hyper individualism, and that will inevitably never serve the most marginalized folks in our society and everyone in general to move forward and be taken care of and supported.
Absolutely. And I also think about how sometimes people talk about surviving as content creators or entrepreneurs of sorts, but what they really mean is they want to maintain a comfortable middle-class lifestyle and up. Like, it's beyond survival. Like, it's beyond like, I can have a place to live and food to eat. It is beyond that. And they may argue and say like, oh, I deserve nice, luxurious stuff, in which case I will agree. You do deserve nice things, but there is a level of like, you deserve nice things, and let's not delude ourselves that it's simply merely survival. Like you want to be comfortable middle class and above. Like you want to. It's tempting, and it's okay to say that, but like you gotta say that, And I think people don't say that because then people might get mad at them. But it's like, well, maybe we should. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of feeling like, well, maybe if you're afraid that there'd be a class war, then there should be. You know what I mean? And then another thing is like, we had talked about this a little bit before, Zahra, but it also seems like a lot of this attention on me, like the attention economy, being successful, that means what? But keeping the attention of like white people who are brand new to social justice and progressive ideas.
Yeah, no, that's very much it, because I mean, have you ever taken a marketing class? White people are generally the main dynamic or demographic they're looking at. And yes, I know they're looking at different demographics. I have taken marketing courses. But like it's like I see people I respect online and I'm like, I love your content, I love your message, and I also look at who likes all your posts and comments, and it's mostly white people who are learning about social justice and starting to undo their work. And I think that's really great and important. And I don't think that's getting us where we need to go. at the speed at which we need to get there.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Because society is just collapsing around us very quickly. And the idea that we have to wait for everyone to just get on board with an idea where it's like, God, I was listening to someone talk about unions recently, and I cannot remember the exact term, so I do really apologize for not using them. But basically, the idea, I think this might be it, single party or like single issue solidarity versus like overall solidarity, right? Like the way Fran Drescher does not support vaccines, but she is the head of SAG. She's a SAG-AFTRA president and does support strikes, right? So like she knows we all need to be paid more money, and I say we, like I'm in the fucking SAG-AFTRA, but in the Writers Guild, but like she understands they all need to pay money. Like we can all get on board with that single issue. We don't need to agree on everything. And like I think a lot of people are like, oh, this is the way it is. This is the way it has to be. We have to get everyone to know everything before we can move forward. And I just don't think that's true. Because if you look around, even like people who wouldn't necessarily agree are going, yeah, it is really hard to pay and like make money and do things. Like they don't have to be full on leftists. They don't have to be all the way on to figure out that this system is not working for them. When people are spending ridiculous amounts of money on eggs and different things at the grocery store, like buying nothing costs so much now. People see there's a problem, and I like, and this is where maybe I'm getting too political, but like I think we need to be working on mutual aid and building up our systems and communities so that we can form a general strike. Enough of us understand what the fuck is going on, that we are being fucked over at every corner. Like Bob Iger is basically like, I don't know, I'll just wait for everyone to be unhoused. I don't fucking care. Like in quotes and stuff, you know what I mean? Like it's so wild. So it's like we see the issue. The issue is that billionaires are bleeding us all fucking dry to be like, look how fucking smart I am. I can do a cage match with Mark Zuckerberg. Like, fuck off, dude. Sorry, I'm getting a little upset. Back to my point is like we all recognize that we're in a cost of living crisis. And instead of trying to educate people and sell stuff and keep protecting ourselves, like, fuck, man, get involved in your communities, figure out local mutual aid groups. I'm not a big fan of DSA personally, but they are a great way to find mutual aid and local organizations in your area. So like Google DSA, whatever city you live in, go to their Instagram and look through who follows them, because you will find someone you align with, whether they are people who are protecting people having abortions. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear my laundry machine going off in the background. That's my bad. Okay. You know, like whether you have people who are protecting abortions, get involved in your local food pantry. There are people who are working on gardens in Orlando that I think is really good. There's like a group called Peer Support Network that does like emotional justice and making sure people feel emotionally supported for different groups. There are disability rights advocacy groups. Sorry, I am going on a fucking rant now, but like there are so many goddamn ways to get involved in your local community that will actually impact the lives of people and move us towards where we actually need to be going. That is not trying to sell people on your next course or whatever you're doing, or buying another course or doing another training or following another guru or whatever the fuck people were doing. Sorry, Hien, please.
Okay, I just want to say, first off, you're talking to me, so never apologize for being too political in any way. I think that if people are at the point where they are listening to this final podcast, they probably know that there is no such thing as too political when it's the two of us. Secondly, I'm so glad you just went on what you called a rant. I was like, thank you so much for saying those things, because I was thinking about pivoting, like, okay, and so what is the direction that we do want to go towards? And you basically said it all. And I mean, that's, you said it. Like, I basically want to say, I agree with Zahra, endorse what Zahra said. And I hope everyone thinks about it, because, and I'm thinking about for myself too, like there was a time we had a vision with our podcast that it would be you know, we might have sponsors, or we may have had ads, and we would have a lot of people paying into our Substack and whatnot, which, by the way, like, we never had more, I'll be honest, like, we never had, I think at any given point, we never had more than 3 subscribers. All right. Like we never really had that much monetary support. But it's interesting because I'm thinking about, like, you know, if we had gone the route and continue to go on the route of just trying to simply, like, yeah, like, we should just monetize our podcast because we believe in it and it's good, and these voices, like, and all those things can be true, but in a way, I'm kind of glad that there aren't too many people who put their money into us. Not because I don't think that, like, oh, we deserve to get paid, but I just think it in terms of more like, I hope you then take your money and put it in your local community. Like, I hope you care about your mutual aid groups. Like, I hope you care about your friends and your neighbors more than to podcasters. You know what I mean? Like, is that so wild to say?
No, I think that's amazing, and I think it's perfect. And yeah, no, I feel that as well, because I was the one who's supposed to be looking up ads and stuff, and every time I'm looking at stuff, it's just like, this feels so fucking gross. Like, what are we selling our soul so that we can tell you all, like, wellness is good? Yeah, we're all helping each other. And it's like, yeah, we're also like exploiting and being exploited at every fucking turn of our lives of every day. You know?
Yeah, like imagine if we are having these conversations, and in the middle, I'm like, and speaking of, like, let me tell you about, I don't know, this skincare brand that you need to get and consume, because then they help us, you know, live our lives, or what. Like, do you know how ridiculous that would be? But like, that's most people out there, right? Like, or not, it's like, by the way, imagine us talking about climate disaster and exploitation and trying to, like, hustle you, like, oh, buy our merch, buy our t-shirts that are questionably made, probably, right? Like, wouldn't that be so ridiculous? But that's everywhere, right? Like, I'm saying, wouldn't it be ridiculous because we know it is, but like, actually, we also have accepted that so much. Just thinking about all the content creators and the people that we follow online and who we do consume content from, it's like, we don't really think much of it. Like, we've been so conditioned to, like, accept consumption and ads being pushed in our face at any given point that we never question it. And then, in fact, sometimes when we do question it, like, if there was like a really big YouTuber or creator, when you do question it, you get so much pushback. Like, how dare you? They need to make a living too. Therefore, it's okay that they're hustling ads and sponsorships and merch in our face, like things we do not need at all.
Absolutely. And I think that very much goes to speak to, while it's okay on the individual level, on a systemic and a social level, it's actually really fucking bad for us. So we shouldn't do it. It's like, yeah, does it matter if you, one person, throws a plastic cup away? No, but if everyone every day throws a plastic cup away for every single day of their lives, that makes a big fucking difference. And I know this isn't to be like shaming people about your ecological footprint, because we all know that if, like, what is it, like 4 or 5 companies just cut their emissions, we would all probably not be experiencing one of the greatest heat waves that has ever happened on this planet. But besides that, but yeah, no, it is very normalized that it's like, buy our thing, and then you're being unsupportive if you say it's not a thing. It's like, on a social level, this is not helping us. On a bigger level, this is not helping us. This is harming us. And we cannot all individually keep using the excuse, but it helps me. Great. Who is harmed in the process of this?
No, that's 100%. I'm so glad you put it that way. And, you know, I don't know. I feel like there is maybe a segment of the population, and sometimes I feel this way too, that is just kind of like, okay, I agree with you, but so what? Like, the powers that be seem so insurmountable that it's just like, well, fuck it. You know, like, I'm just going to do what feels good to me while I can survive, because I don't know how much longer the world's going to be okay. You know, so there are people who feel that way as well. And honestly, I don't have a response to that, because sometimes I feel like that as well. But I also do feel like, I mean, I hope this sounds more empowering than like preachy, but like I do hope people realize that they are smart enough to do the right thing. I think a lot of the world makes us feel like we don't know enough or we don't have enough of the clout and influence, but like no, just as an individual, like you have a brain, you can use it, and like you truly are smart enough to do the right thing. Like, and it doesn't have to come from me or Zahra. Like, we do encourage you to think about mutual aid and taking care of your communities as an extension of yourself instead of, you know, falling into the depths of the wellness industrial complex and trying to take care of yourself that way. But also, like, we've been there. But yeah, like you are smart enough to know how to do the right thing. Like, I really just hope that people realize that, because it's not just like, no, I'm stupid, I'm just gonna do what the influencer, tell me to do because they know better because of consumption and their ads and their good marketing. It's like, no, you're actually smart enough to know how to do the right thing, but it doesn't feel easy, and it's not like, what's the word, like gratifying, right? Like, it's not gratifying. It's not as gratifying as like, I mean, how many of us have purchased like a coaching program or a training or whatever because we thought that would like fix our problems, and it felt really good to like, yeah, these words on a page really hype me up, so I'm gonna like entering my credit card numbers and press yes, and then look at my calendar and try to do this thing, and then like, did that actually change your life the way you thought it would? I reckon for most of us it did not. I mean, right, Zahra? Like,
As someone who has bought many trainings, many programs, courses, things, whatever, no, that shit doesn't change your life. I quite often find myself leaving those trainings, and I have spoken to many participants of these things who feel the same way, where you go, I don't feel like I got it all. I don't feel like I understand. You know, I feel like I wish I had gotten more out of it. I wish, you know, there's more. You always want more. And that is kind of the nature of capitalism, is you will never satisfy that beast. And I also just want to say too, like, Hien is so right. We are all smart enough. You are smart enough. You don't need us. And like, also, yeah, it's hard. The powers that be, they have all the control, they have all the power, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And no one's asking you to like stop in your entirety and like never order Uber Eats again, or never have a little fun drink, or treat yourself, or do silly things, or like consume anything, you know, like that's pretty much the only way most of us are actually surviving at this point, is a fun little treat every day. Or, you know, a couple times a week, or whatever the thing is for you, where you're just like, yep, this is the thing that makes me excited, that I can handle what is the impending collapse of society happening all around us. And I do want to just like go back to mutual aid for a second, because like mutual aid is not this, it's not just volunteering, it's not just donating money, it's not just charity. It is recognizing that as a group of people, we can take care of each other. We can support each other as communities, as a society. We can support each other, and putting in a little bit of your one fun drink thing a week towards a food kitchen that you know, or dropping off, buying one extra thing at the groceries, or doing a BOGO on groceries and dropping something off at your neighborhood fridge. Like, there are a lot of little ways to get involved that don't involve like, and we all need to change our whole lives. So I'm not saying this like, don't change your life, everything's fine, just drop off some pasta at a fucking neighborhood fridge and you'll be fine. But like, these are the little acts that help us divest from the capitalist means that we're all in it for ourselves, and we all have to take care of ourselves, and it's so hyper independent. And I think at the end of the day, if we leave this podcast with one thing, I think it's just that I want people to, oh my God, this is making me cry. I want people to support each other, you know, like, that's how we're going to get through this. That's how the world is going to change. It's not the next training you take, or the next course you do, or you becoming the Katniss Everdeen of your fucking story, because that is such a thing where everyone's just like, well, if I can't be Katniss Everdeen, what the fuck does it matter? And it's like, if you watched the movies, Katniss did not do everything on her own. She had a bunch of other people that I don't know because I fell asleep in that movie, but they were very important and integral to her survival and the thriving and the breaking down of the system. You don't need to be Katniss Everdeen. You just need to be one of the people. Figure out what your thing is and find your way to contribute, and your life matters. And I don't know, man. Sorry, Hien. It would not be a podcast if I wasn't a rambler. So this is the last one. It's a good one.
It's a great one. I love it so much. And, I think if I were to try to concisely put it into a question to ask yourself, it is, what can I do to move away from capitalism and neoliberalism and that sort of like hyper individualistic way of thinking? And how can I move toward, right? How can I move toward community and mutual aid and mutual healing, right? And I mean, I think it starts there, right? And I think somewhere along the way, we forgot those questions. Like, I think, and meaning like, when I say we, I mean the well-intentioned people in the wellness community that we know and probably have seen, is they may have started there, but because they're under capitalism and then they focus on trying to survive, it becomes like something kind of weird. But I think we can always ask ourselves that, like, you are smart enough to ask yourself that question today and have your own answers. And there's no right or wrong answers, but I think there are genuine answers. Like, there are, like, you can be honest with yourself or you can lie to yourself, right? And so I think, like, yeah, like today, like, how can you get away from capitalism and how can you get a little bit closer to community? And that's going to be a different answer for every person. But I hope to set that intention for myself moving forward to ask those questions. And this is while I'm trying to live my normal life, working 40 hours a week, living in what is increasingly more like a climate disaster, like all the BS in 2023. Living in a world where it's like, oh, increasing fascism, but we're all kind of like whatever about it because I'm in a blue state. Meanwhile, where Zahra is, like, people are really suffering. I mean, then meanwhile, I talk to my nice liberal friends here and they just kind of roll their eyes and don't give a fuck. Like, while like all of this stuff that is like makes us feel so small and insignificant, it's like, can we still ask ourselves these questions honestly and then see what we do from there? So yeah, I guess that is what I leave you all with. Is there anything else that you want to share, Zahra?
No, oh my God, why am I crying again? I can't control myself. I just want to say thank you. I appreciate, first and foremost, Hien, who came to me with this idea and is like so brilliant and wonderful and just adds so much to my life and all of these conversations. I would not have wanted to do this with anyone else. And I want to say thank you to everyone listening and all of our guests. But I don't know, you guys have made this such a fun journey and we have appreciated the ride. And I truly hope that this is just, I don't know, something that somebody got something out of other than us. But even if it's just us, I feel so fucking grateful.
Thank you, Zahra. I also want to thank you and our guests. I think that for me, it has been always incredibly fun. And like, of course, we won't necessarily be recording our conversations, but this doesn't mean, like, again, this breakup is not between me and Zahra. This is Zahra and me breaking up with the podcast, right? And so I just know that I'm so lucky to have someone like Zahra in my life who I can have these like real fiery, passionate conversations with. And it is just so fulfilling and enjoying, like, is that a word? It's so fulfilling and like joyful. And the thing is, like, it doesn't have to have been like a huge quote success in the traditional sense for it to have meant something, because it means a hell of a lot to me. Everyone who said yes to the podcast, all the beautiful rich conversations we have, all the conversations I've had with Zahra, both recorded and unrecorded, like, all of this just feels so, it feels to me so valuable and meaningful that, like, it's like you can't put a price on this, even though I know other podcasters would be like, oh, you should have done XYZ steps to try to make 6 figures in a year, you know, whatever, or like to get 20 million downloads or like whatever. And like, none of that matters to me. I think what matters to me is that like, well, I'm a 4. So what matters to me is that we got to express ourselves and share our truth. And in that process, you know, shared with others, you know, our truth. And I feel like I will always be able to look back on this project with so much love that in a way, it's kind of a bit of like, and Jess had told me this a long time ago, what she appreciated about this project. Jess Young, who is on season 1, was saying how in a way we're like capturing an archive, a piece of history and of the wellness world, particularly in this time. Like, it's kind of weird to think that you're a part of history, but you are, especially living it these days, right? So yeah, I do want to say that. And then Zahra, what was that Tony? It's funny. What was that Tony Robbins quote you mentioned earlier? I feel like it's worth saying
No,
as we
okay,
close
thank
out
you.
the podcast.
Because I didn't want to bring it up, but it does feel like very perfect because I feel like Tony Robbins is where I kind of started and fell into wellness a bit. And I'm not 100% sure this is Tony Robbins, but I'm pretty sure. And it is stay committed to your vision, but flexible in your approach. And I think our vision of this was very much always, we want to add to the world. We want to create thoughtful conversation, and we want to help people be well. And I think the way to do that moving forward is more being community based and is more involved in what we're doing there, as opposed to trying to fight a system or an industry that is so wrought with misinformation, disinformation, and conspiracy theories.
Amen. It's like we don't want to fight the ocean anymore as like the few drops, you know? So yeah, thank you everybody for listening this far. You know, we're just so grateful that we had anyone listening at all, and that it's been a really fun ride. And you know, though the podcast is ending, the Thoughtful Wellness Revolution brand is still just going to be a thing that we either of us may or may not do things from. And so you can always feel free to go to our Substack, thoughtfulwellnessrevolution.substack.com, just to see if anything else comes out. But yeah, bye. Just bye. There's no bye for now. It's
no bye for now. Just bye.
Bye.
Bye. We love you.